Welcome back, and if it's your first time here, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to talk with you today about the inner work and why we do it. In fact, sometimes why many of us can be absolutely terrified to do it. I used to be one of those people. I also want to talk about the spiritual solutions today and what that even means and what makes sometimes the work of going inward so terrifying. For some of us, we don't even know what that means. How do I go inward? So I'm going to get into all of that. I want to talk about my story a little bit. So this might be a little bit longer than some of my videos. We'll see. And I'm also going to give some actionable tools and strategies on how to do this work with yourself, and mostly why I feel it's so important right now in this world. Back in the day, I would never have categorized myself as somebody who was stressed out or even somebody who was anxious, when in reality, I had tremendous stress and anxiety. I was so attached to my way of being in my thinking and the way that I work through my problems that I had no idea what really stress meant to me until it kind of all blew up in my face. I have found in my experience that we do need a spiritual solution in order to deal with the emotional, mental, and physical stresses and anxieties that we experience just being human. And your spirituality doesn't have to look like mine. I hired my very first life coach when I was 19 years old. I don't mind telling you, I'm 44 now. So I have been doing a lot of spiritual work. Actually, even before I was 19, when I was about 16 years old is probably when it all began. And so this has been the majority of my life. It's led me eventually to my career, which chose me, by the way. I didn't choose to be a life coach or a mentor. I didn't like aspire to be these things. I thought I was going to go into art and advertising and marketing. There is an aspect to all of us who very much wants to identify in a certain kind of way. For example, I'm a mother. I identify as a mother. But what I have found, and this is a spiritual idea, is in order for me to be the best version of myself as quote unquote mother, I need to lose the title. I need to forget about what the title of mother means and all of the beliefs and ideas that I have packed into this idea of mother. And so that's a big idea, but I wanted to share it to start with today because my idea of the spiritual work of going inward is often centered around us letting go of a lot of our old limiting beliefs, a lot of our old attachments to ideas that we've had about ourselves and that we've had about other people, and specifically around these titles and these ways that we see people. We might see our mother as our mother, our father as our father. You'd say, well, Renee, that's normal. Why wouldn't I? But how about we remove the title and the lens of seeing them as mother and father, and we see them as human? That in itself can shift everything, because we have preconceived notions that we've picked up in our lives and in our culture of what we think a mother is supposed to be, what we think a father is supposed to be. And it's often our thinking and our limited thinking, our limiting belief system that is holding us back from being in connection with our spirit. The next thing I want to talk about today is something called Wetaiko. In simple terms, Wetaiko is a mind virus. It is when we get so lost in our thinking and so lost in our own identities and our mind that we become very unconscious to the ways that we are being controlled or manipulated by external forces. If you just look around the world, you can see it being acted out in every single corner, in every community, in every country. We can't see the blind spots in our own unconscious. And the other thing that happens is we become oblivious to our own madness. And there's a lot of shadow beliefs that limit us. When I was growing up and a teenager, you might have heard more of a soft-spoken, high-pitched voice. I looked innocent. This is probably more of what people told me I look like. However, if you knew me and you really knew me, I was very rebellious. And I think this is common with a lot of people. The shadow aspect of me was my rebelliousness. It was the part of me that I kind of kept hidden. And so what brings us into our inner work is learning about all these different aspects of ourselves and bringing them together. Holistic healing, seeing the whole picture, getting honest with who we really are. So this is a really beautiful tool, frankly. And so we can see, who am I pretending to be? Our people-pleasing tendencies, our ways of trying to be perfect come up, our ways of trying to show off, or our way of maybe overthinking, or the side of us that might be quiet and introspective in one area, or another part of us that might be more narcissistic and controlling in another area. So we're wanting to find these aspects of ourselves. And you don't need a psychology degree to do this. You don't need to be a coach. You don't need to be anything but who you are right here and now. What I have seen is that we have become very sick in our spirit in this world. And this is important. In fact, it's not just important, it's imperative. I don't believe we have any other option to do the inner work. We can't avoid it anymore. So when you see a world that is at war in almost every corner, and what I mean by war is not simply just guns and shooting war, although that's a big one. What I also mean is the war that we have going on with ourselves. We've been battling wars of weight, of gender, of wars of corporation to corporation, wars of identity, wars of Democrat versus Republican, Black versus white. We have been at war with each other for so long. We can't take all the blame, because some of that blame goes towards the media that has been mass controlling our mind for a very long time to create a very specific split, a polarization, and a duality of this right versus wrong mentality. And the only way that we can actually move forward as a humanity is for us to do our own inner work. And if we have been avoiding our inner work, then we will be called into more and more situations that will feel hard and challenging and disruptive, or things that blow up in our face, or relationships that seem to be so unstable that we can't take it anymore, or health issues, physical ailments, chronic pain, war going on within families, or within your relationship with your boss or your company or your financial situation, you name it. These things that are all happening outside of you in your external life that are disruptive, or they're not going how you want them to go, they are a clear reflection to what is going on inside of your mind, emotions, and spiritual soul self. One of the biggest distractions that I feel we use to avoid our inner work is getting lost into the business that comes outside of us, into other people's business. Now you might argue, well, it is my business because that is happening in my backyard, or this is impacting my family, or this is impacting XYZ. Yes, all that may be true. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot about it. You're not going to be able to make long-lasting changes or control it. But the one thing you can control is the work that you do within yourself. Your way to God, or to spirituality, or to spirit, or universe, whatever it is that you want to call it, it is your way. It's also on the timeline of God, universe, spirit, because sometimes we come into this work, this inner work, because we have no other choice, and it literally is present itself to us, and we just have to do it. It's called rock bottom. It's called dark night of the soul, something I'm very familiar with. And then sometimes we choose it. Now I'm going to tell you about why this is so important right now and why you can't avoid doing this work. See, I might have mentioned to you that I work as a coach and a mentor and a holistic nutrition practitioner. So I work with people one-on-one. I work with people in a group program that's more of a hybrid of one-on-one and group coaching. And it's got a school that goes with it called Health and Prosperity. By the way, there's links below to check all that stuff out. The reason I'm talking about this with you is because there's a very deep connection between doing spiritual inner work and the healing of our physical body. You can't have one without doing the other. This is my forever work and my biggest passion in life. And it's bringing together the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual work. Now, when I talked about this back in the day, when I first started this work about 15 years ago, it was very much deemed as a kind of a spiritual hippie guru kind of thing. And like, ooh, yeah, but there's actually science that backs up every single thing that I am about to talk about. In fact, the science is older than I am. It came out somewhere, 60 or 70 years ago. And for whatever reason, we have a culture that needs to have the science and the spiritual be separate, but in reality the science and the spirituality are really like very connected, just not a lot of people have figured that out yet. So what I'm saying is that your emotional and your mental health is a direct reflection of the health of your immune system, your nervous system, your hormones, your endocrine system. So your inner work that I talk about today is really about the health of your emotional and your mental health. And you need a spiritual solution to kind of wake up and click things into gear so you can see things differently with your mind. And you also need a spiritual solution to help you find the tools that are going to allow you the space and the experience to process your emotions differently. What we know scientifically is that if somebody has suppressed emotions, that they will have a suppressed immune system. If somebody has suppressed emotions and their mental health is unstable, it's going to have an impact on their endocrine system or on their nervous system, as an example. So a lot of the people who come to work with me, they tell me that they have chronic health issues that they haven't tried everything for. They haven't been able to get through them. My chronic health issues, my chronic pain, any of that stuff that I used to have, some things still pop up from time to time, but it's always been very, very clear to me that it's connected to my emotional, my mental, and my spiritual health. And every single time I approached it that way, the stuff would clear. So when somebody comes to work with me, I'm really upfront with them and I tell them, you have to be willing to do the inner work. If they just want the base level, give me the food to eat and tell me what workout to do and the supplements to take, but they refuse to go deep in the inner work, then I'm not the person to work with them. And the reason why is because I know it's only going to be a Band-Aid. I know they're not willing to see the whole picture. Did you know that autoimmune disease, for example, or any kind of chronic illness or something like cancer is really linked to how we carry and handle our emotional and mental stress? People who are dealing with chronic pain, chronic disease, chronic stress, autoimmune, cancer, they have these very repeatable kinds of emotional mental health symptoms that I have seen over the years as a practitioner working with, I don't know how many hours now, but it's over 5,000 coaching hours, probably more than that. The roles that I see them play in their lives are taking on this responsibility for everyone else in the world. Maybe self-sacrificing themselves, compulsively concerned with the needs of other people. So it's very much that martyr role combined with a bit of a victim role. The other things that I see is being so identified with their role in the world or their career or the title that they have in their particular business or career that they're in. And so they're so identified with this, I'm a blank, this is what I do to help people. I had this myself, by the way, and I had to go through a healing crisis in order to work through this. When we're so identified with this, we don't actually know who our true self is. So the commonality that I see for people when they have chronic physical pain and that are being called to do the inner work is a loss of a sense of self. They don't know who they are outside of this role or identity that they have fit themselves into. These people also tend to be someone who suppresses their anger. They might not even realize that they're angry. And if they are angry, they don't know how to feel the anger, or they have big rage, explosive anger outbursts with no idea really how to have a healthy relationship to their anger. And then you'll also see a lot of people pleasers, people who want to be the peacemakers and play nice and not, don't want to rock the boat, don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They get easily distracted by other people's business, other people's problems. They're very much in their head and they're thinking, a lot of self-criticism. So they might look nice and say nice things to you out here, but inside they're berating you, they're judging you, and that is actually the biggest reflection to them judging themselves. So they believe they're responsible for how other people feel. They believe that they cannot fail. There's a lot of perfectionism. Now, I'm talking about this as a they. I have a feeling that if you're still listening to this video, that you might recognize some of these things within yourself. I can tell you from my own experience that every single thing I have said to you so far is something I have actually dealt with in my life. The reason I'm so good at working with people through these experiences is because a lot of it has been my own lived experience. Some people might paint the picture of having the best childhood, but it doesn't mean just because you had the most incredible childhood that you didn't experience some form of some trauma. Now, there's a lot of others out there who will tell you not everyone has trauma. I'm so sick of people saying that everyone has trauma. Well, I would disagree. I believe every human being has some form of trauma. Trauma lives on a spectrum. It's a very big spectrum. So the trauma out here, capital T trauma, of a small child living through a war-torn country right now is not even in the same category as like a little t trauma of somebody who wasn't held enough as a child. Now, the difference I want to make here, though, is we're not comparing those. Now, we want to compare them because that is in our nature in humanity. That's what we've been trained to do, is wanting to compare and, again, make things as right or wrong or bad or good. It's really about you as a unique individual, you as a unique human with your specific kind of nervous system and how that particular trauma impacted your nervous system. Even though you might not have had the experience that somebody else had, it doesn't mean it wasn't deeply impactful to your soul, to the needs that you had as a child, or to your nervous system. As a child, I had a very hard time being on this planet. It wasn't easy for me. I was quiet as a young little girl, and I felt that when I spoke up, I was shamed or ridiculed. People made fun of my voice. People made fun of my ears. I was told that my opinions didn't matter. So there was a lot for me around not understanding what love was versus control. Because for me, love felt very much like control. There was a lot of surgeries that I went through that was all kind of like jumbled together for me as a kid. So it was like criticism and surgeries, so physical stuff and shame and worry and not feeling in control. And this created a lot of my egoic inner critic. The voice in my head became very loud and codependency ensued. That was a catalyst for me to attract many unhealthy relationships. Maybe there could be some toxic people in the world, but I really think at the center of it all, it's just people who have never looked at their trauma, their wounding, or have had the opportunity to do their inner work. And what I had to see is that I was at the center of every single one of those unhealthy relationships I had attracted from that point forward. And thankfully, I was led into a lot of directions, from reading books, going to 12-step programs, watching The Secret back then, working with therapists, hiring life coaches, getting involved in retreats, and all kinds of different experiences that started to unfold into my life. I remember watching and listening to Abraham Hicks when I was just 20 years old. And so all of these things started to pile into my life. Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, was one of the first books that ever impacted me. There's a time when we do our inner work where we do need to acknowledge our history, our ancestry. We have to look at that. We have to look at the lineage of where all this stuff has come from. There's a lot of repeated trauma. There's a study of epigenetics that really shows us like how we pass down a lot of our traumatic stuff from generations upon generations before us. It can live within our body. But it does not benefit us to stay in a victimhood of blaming those other humans that are in our world, because that will never bring us into the inner work. A superiority process of like, I'm better than they are, and that's not going to work for you. I even noticed that at the beginning of my doing inner work and becoming more self-aware, I started to notice that my relationships changed. I started to notice that the conversations that I had with people were different. And let me say this, because this is very important to hear. We want to tell everybody about it, but sometimes that's not our place to do so. Unless we're asked, what are you doing? I noticed something different about you. Then maybe there's an invitation, but it's not our job to go around and tell other people about the inner work that we're doing. It's not our job to think we're superior because someone's just not done their inner work. You know how many times I've heard that? They're just not on a spiritual journey like I am. Oh my goodness. We are always on our spiritual journey. And the moment that you forget that you're both student and teacher, the moment you forget that, you will be slapped up in the face, metaphorically, and you will be reminded that you are indeed still a freaking student. But I want you to see the big arch goal here, and that is to develop a sense of yourself, or your soul self. Who are you in your soul? And how we get there is to practice self-awareness. And the way we practice self-awareness is that we start to develop an inner voice. There's a voice we have in our head, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. And we start to develop this inner witness to our thoughts. And we all have a voice in our head. There's the part of you that's listening to that voice, and then there is actually the voice. I'm going to have to make a part 2 to this video, I'm realizing right now, because there's just so much. So, and this is just like basic step 1 with it, you know, but I will make probably a part 2, given if this is something you all want to hear. So let me know in the comments if this is resonating for you and if you want to hear more. To develop this inner witness, we need to, 1, start to track the thoughts that we have. Sometimes that means writing them down. Sometimes it means to see the mirror of other people in the world that might, quote unquote, trigger us. The word trigger has become a very big word. I almost don't even like it anymore, but I think it's a good word in the sense of what we're talking about right now. So if somebody bothers you, or you're just irritated or irked by them, it's usually because they're reflecting back at you something within yourself that you need to look at. It might not be the identical thing that they have. You might be annoyed with something about them that's, say, loud and obnoxious. It doesn't necessarily mean you're loud and obnoxious. It could mean something different, but it is absolutely a mere reflection to you coming into your inner work. So anything that happens outside of you that bothers you, you best write that down. This is bringing you more into your self-awareness so you can see, what is it about that bothers me so much. There's no one right way to do the inner work. Everyone has a way in that is different. So I have found that introspection and contemplation are 2 of the biggest ways. And sometimes introspection for me is through exercise, and I just can be thinking while I'm moving my body. Contemplation is a bit more like writing and journaling out some of my thoughts. This idea of, for example, a lot of people who have met me in my life, they might think, God, Renee, I often hear this from people, you're very present and very calm and chill, and I can feel like I can open up to you, which is all true. But what they don't know is that my mind is like very much overthinking. I'm like, I have so many ideas running in my head at all times. So it's like, this aspect of you that I want you to see is a little bit, how do other people observe you, but then also, who are you being in this particular moment? And what is that contrast? Is there a stark contrast that you need to look at, like the good girl or the good boy versus the rebellious one? So we use introspection, we use contemplation, we use mirror work, which is noticing how other people bother us and remembering it's not really about them. We want to make it about them. I know we really do, but it's not. It's really about, why are you letting them bother you so much? Why is what they're doing in their life, which is their business, affecting you so deeply? That's the real big question. Another example that just came to me is, I see it quite often, especially in the career world, where we might hold very big responsibility. We might manage a lot of people, manage a lot of money, or maybe take care or lead a lot of other people. But inside, we have a very deep, low self-esteem and really not a sense of self. And so we want to do something. We want to learn to start to name our feelings. This would be another tool that you can use. I feel lonely. I feel empty. I feel numb. I feel like I don't even know what to do, right? It's just whatever comes out, you start to create a dialogue with that. And then once you do that, you can start to get clarity. How would you like to feel? Here's another little quick assignment, a tool I can give you. Just take out a clean sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle. And on one side, you're going to write down the ways in which you cope when you feel this way. So for example, you might find that you cope by losing yourself in other people or in relationships. You might say, well, I cope from work. For me, I was and I still can be from time to time, but an overachiever. I was always trying to work hard, and I coped through working too much. I also coped through numbing with food and eating too much. Back in the day, I used to use substances to help me cope. I would cope by gossiping or getting lost in judgments. So we're learning, this is the inner work, is we're learning to get honest with what's the ways that I've been operating in this world, and we're starting to see, do I really need to continue it? A lot of times we say, well, this is just who I am. I inherited this from my parents. This is the way I've always been. It's the way I'm always going to be. No, it's not. People can change. People change all the time. Does it take effort? Yes. Does it take repeated daily commitment to new habits? Yes, it does. But the inner work will change your life. And if you find your external life is not the way that you want it to be, then this is where you begin. So I mentioned this, draw the line on the piece of paper that we write on the one side, all the ways that we have been trying to cope. On the other side, we start to write about how we want to grow. Who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? Who do you see in the world? Not in a jealousy way, but maybe that's one of the ways you do cope, is you get jealous or envious of other people. But if that is true and they're a mirror to you, what is it about their life that you like so much? Because that's telling you what actually already lives within inside of you. If you can see it in their life, you actually possess it in your life. And then you put that on the other side of the piece of paper, and you look to that as, this is actually what I want to live into. I am jealous or envious of them because I want more of what they have. Oof, that's a big one. We're becoming the inner witness to our thoughts. We're becoming the person who is willing to go into the inner work. And this is such a big deal. And please don't underestimate how much this can not only change your life, but have a ripple effect on all the people in your life and on this entire world. I hope you like this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me in the algorithm, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you and your experience on doing the inner work. And make sure you subscribe, because I do put out a video every single week, and I'd love for you to be the first to hear about it. I'll see you in the next video.